Welcome back, everybody. My name is Trini, and I am the Batquad. This is the channel where I go through my personal DVD collection from A through Z. Now, this is going to be a special episode because this time I'm talking about my favorite character of all time. Can you guess which one it is? It's the Batman. I am a quadriplegic, so keeping with the theme of four, I'm going to break this episode up into four different parts. I'm going to talk about the history of Batman, my history with Batman, and then I'm going to talk about the DVD movies as they came out theatrically. So, of course, I still have to rewatch these movies. I'm going to rate them 1 through 4 wheelchair score. And at the end, I'm going to have them battle it out to figure out which ones I like from best to least. So, without further ado, let's continue on with Season B with this special episode about the Batman. Okay, so a quick history lesson about Batman. Batman was published by National Comics back in 1939. It was a little bit of a response to Superman because Superman was such a hit, and he came out in 1938, and National Comics would later became DC Comics. We're looking for another superhero type figure that would just smash records the way Superman was. So Bob Kane and Bill Finger, they knocked around a couple ideas, and they came up with the idea of Batman. Batman's first appearance was in Detective Comics number 27, and of course, Batman being Batman, he was a smash hit. During Batman's first year of publication, he was a lone Avenger. He was by himself and didn't have a partner. But by 1940, in Detective Comics number 38, there was the debut of Robin the Boy Wonder. Batman was already a smash hit, but with the introduction of his sidekick Robin, his comic books went through the roof. Mostly because kids could now identify with the kid partner and they could pretend to be Batman's partner. Also in 1940, Batman was given his own comic book. So instead of being in just Detective Comics, he was given a brand new issue in Batman number 1. Now the significance of this is because this was also the first appearance of Joker and Catwoman. Batman with his partner Robin were a runaway success. They were selling comic books like crazy. So what did they do? They decided to do a movie. So the first time that Batman and Robin were ever on screen were in 1943. And that was during the time when they would do movie serials. So in 1943, the first serial was Batman. And then there was a follow-up one in 1949 called Batman and Robin. In those movies, the characters of Batman and Robin were played by different actors. And the stories were not really necessarily comic book related. They had brand new bad guys that they were up against that were strictly made up because of the movies. Now, the movie serials, I never really watched. I've seen them on YouTube. I've seen clips here and there. I've seen behind the scenes stuff about the movie serials, but personally, I've never watched them, so I really couldn't tell you if they're any good. And I didn't buy them on DVD, so I can't review them here. What? That makes sense? Did I say it wrong? Batman's popularity continued to grow. And in 1954, there was a book that was released called Seduction of the Innocent. Seduction of the Innocent basically said that comic books were part of what was making juveniles delinquent back in the day, which was causing, smoking and breaking rules and homosexuality. So in the 50s, this was a big no-no. And what happened? So I just spit. This book caused such a ruckus that it was brought to the Senate's attention. And because of that attention, a comic code authority was adopted in 1955. So in this comic code authority, what happens is every comic book that was released had to be reviewed to make sure that there was no mention of zombies or vampires or homosexuality or any kind of crazy violence. The comic books became really kid-friendly. And during the 50s and 60s, the comic book sales really sunk because most of the comic books they didn't make any kind of sense. They weren't fun. They were always off on some other planet doing other things other than fighting crime like they used to. And because Batman and Robin were just not the same characters. At some point during the 60s, while there was parties at the Playboy Mansion, they brought back those serials that were made in the 1940s. And as legend has it, at one of these parties at the Playboy Mansion, there was a TV producer there. And when he got to see the reaction of the crowd that was there of Batman and Robin fighting all these bad guys, it dawned on him that maybe this could be an actual series. And that's how the Batman 1966 series was born. The TV series was released in 1966. and it was a smash hit. Now, originally they wanted to make a movie to promote the TV series, but instead they did the movie in between seasons 1 and 2. They did do the movie to promote the series overseas. Now, when the movie came out, it was just a modest hit here in the States, but overseas, it was a big hit, and it really went a long way to sell the TV series overseas. Now, for those of you that don't know, the Batman TV series and the Batman movie stars Adam West as Bruce Wayne Batman and Burt Ward as Robin and Dick Grayson. Now, because of this TV series and because of this movie, there was a thing called Batmania. So in the 60s, Batman was everywhere. He was on merchandise, on t-shirts, on TV screens. Just everybody was talking to him, and it just really brought a lot of attention to the characters of Batman and Robin. So because of that, of course, comic book sales rose and superheroes in general became very popular again, despite being villainized by that book, Seduction of the Innocent. The series was really popular and it caught on really quickly, but like lots of TV series sometimes, even though it starts off really good, eventually the excitement for the show dies down. Even though the TV series was canceled, they did continue Batman and Robin's adventures in animated form. There were a series of Batman and Robin cartoons that were produced during the 60s and 70s, and also he was part of the supergroup Super Friends, which was basically the animated version of the Justice League, which starred Aquaman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Robin. These cartoons continued through the 70s and through the mid 80s. Now, somewhere around there, 1975 is when I was born. Now, I'm not sure when it was that I was actually introduced to Batman and Robin as characters or superheroes, but I would say probably around 4 or 5 years old is when I first started seeing pictures of myself with Batman t-shirts or in a Robin costume. At some point, Batman and Robin affected me and my life. So obviously, I was too young to know about all the stuff that happened in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But at some point, I started watching the Saturday morning cartoons with Batman and Robin, and I started watching the reruns of the TV series from the 60s. And that's where my fascination of Batman and Robin actually started. Way back in 1940, the Robin character was created so that children can identify with that character and kind of insert themselves into the Batman and Robin adventures, and they could all be and think they were Robin. I mean, that was definitely what was my hook. Because even though I'm a huge Batman fan, I think I was a Robin fan first. I love the character of Robin. I used to run around pretend that I was Batman's partner, and we would go fight crime together. And I had a yellow towel around my neck, and I dressed as him for Halloween. I mean, I originally loved the Robin character. So watching the old reruns for the TV show and the Saturday morning cartoons, at some point they showed the movie Batman the movie, and I remember seeing it for the first time. I think I was at my grandma's house, and I saw it on TV. And that's one of the movies that we're talking about today is Batman the movie. So Batman the movie, of course, stars Adam West and Burt Ward as their Batman and Robin. A lot of the same actors that portrayed the bad guys from the TV series were also in the movie, but there was one character that was missing, or I'm sorry, one actress that was missing, and that was Julie Newmar. Julie Newmar was the Catwoman from the TV series, but for the movie, she had another movie to make, and she couldn't make the filming, so they had to recast her with Lee Merriweather. Even though she was a Miss America, she has a beautiful face, and she has cat green eyes. I don't know, I didn't feel her as Catwoman. Watching the TV series, Julie Newmar, I don't know what it is, but Julie Newmar was just, she may not be as pretty as Lee Merriweather, but there was something about Julie Newmar that there's just something more sexy about her. Much like the TV series, the movie, it's just silly. The plot of the movie is the four villains get together. You've got Joker, Catwoman, Penguin, and Riddler. They get together and they kidnap this inventor who comes up with this gun that dehydrates people and turns people into dust. And so the bad guys, they come up with this idea that they're going to use that for ransom and to make themselves rich. I know it's silly, it's convoluted, and but it's just like the TV series. Now, I hadn't watched this movie in a long time, and after rewatching it for this review, I found myself a little bit bored by it. I don't know what it was, but I kept looking at my watch and thinking, man, when is this movie going to be over? And I think part of the problem is that the TV series, it's short. It's like 22 minutes, and usually they were broken up into two parts. So a full story was maybe about 40 minutes long, but this movie's over an hour and a half long, so it just feels like it kind of overstays its welcome. There's a certain excitement that goes on during the TV series, I guess because it's shorter and they're getting to the point a lot quicker. But the action seems to happen more often. The jokes are just coming at you faster, and it just seems like the movie, because of its length, it just takes a long time to get to where you need it to be. Now, don't get me wrong, Burt Ward and Adam West, they're doing amazing as Batman and Robin. They're I mean, they were born to play those characters. They're just so charming when they're doing their thing, and watching them play off each other, it's fun to watch. But for some reason in this movie, it takes a while for any kind of real action to happen. There's a little bit of a subplot where Catwoman, as she's playing this character called Miss Kitka, and she's playing a Russian character, and she's seducing Bruce Wayne. And there's like this whole long subplot in there that really kind of just drags the movie down. It isn't until about an hour into the movie before the first, I don't know, fight scene happens. And that's what Batman and Robin that's what the TV series was known for their fighting, for their zap, pow, bang. I mean, it doesn't even happen until the end of the movie. So a couple of fight scenes that happen in between, it seemed like it was just not as exciting. One of the cool things about the movie is that they added a bat copter, a bat boat. They even had a bat motorcycle with Robin on the side cart. I mean, it was pretty cool. They had a lot of cool gadgets. And of course, this movie's famous for two things, really. Number one is the bat bomb, where Batman's running around trying to get rid of this bomb. And it's this hilarious scene where he's carrying this bomb over his head and he's on this pier and he's trying to get rid of it. But every time he tries to throw it somewhere, there's like nuns walking by, or there's a Salvation Army that's crossing his path, or there's some lovers kissing on a boat and he can't throw it over the pier. And at one point he looks at the camera and says, "Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb." I mean, it's a pretty classic scene. I think it's funny. Adam West, he just sells it so well, and I couldn't imagine anybody else doing that part. The other famous part about this movie is Batman gets attacked by a shark while he's hanging from the Batcopter, and the shark's attacking his leg, and he asks for Robin to get him the bat shark repellent, and then he uses the bat shark repellent on the shark, and it saves him. That's just one of the other scenes in the movies that this movie is famous for. One thing I noticed about this rewatch is even though they had the four bad guys of Joker, Penguin, Riddler, and Catwoman, it's weird because Penguin is actually the one that's orchestrating everything, which is odd because he's not the character that you would normally think of as being the one in charge, but it's his henchmen that are doing all the fighting. They're in a submarine that looks like a penguin. It's his idea with the dehydrating of the victims. And at the end, when they're fighting on the submarine, Penguin's the last one that's fighting with Batman, and they're having a sword fight. Batman had a sword, and Penguin had an umbrella, of course. But he's like the main bad guy in the movie, and I never noticed that before. So even though Joker's one of Batman's main adversaries, and most people would say he's the number one bad guy, in this movie, it seems like he almost has nothing to do, which is kind of weird watching it this time around. So, like I said, I did have a good time watching the movie, but honestly, it did drag for me a little bit. And if I had to give this movie a rating, even though, I mean, let's take nostalgia out of it, the fact that I love Adam West and Burt Ward, I mean, if I give it an honest rating from 1 to 4 wheelchairs, I'd probably have to give it a 2. So, continuing with my love of Batman, my history with him. So, sometime in the 80s, I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, and I was finally introduced to comic books. And I started reading comic books. I would go to, say, like a 7-Eleven, and they used to sell them there in a spinning rack. And I would get whatever the latest comic book is. And before I could read, I would look at the pictures and have them read to me by my stepmom Kathy, or my dad, or whoever could read with me. They would read comic books with me, and I just had a love for Batman. I always gravitated towards Batman and Robin. I know early on I used to get Spider-Man comics and Hulk and Superman, but I always gravitated towards Batman and Robin. I never could forget how watching the TV series and watching the movie made me feel. And I always wanted to be part of the Batman's world. As I grew a little bit older, I'd say maybe about 10 or 11, I started to really get into comic books and actually started going to a comic book store to actually buy comic books. So that would put it about 86 or 87. And right around that time in 1986, a comic book was released starring Batman called The Dark Knight Returns. The popularity of this book made Batman into a much darker character. After the Batman TV series, even the comic book sales started to dip, mostly because people couldn't take Batman and Robin seriously. So in the 70s, they started to make Batman a little bit darker. They started to introduce a little bit more darker themes. Whereas before, say the Joker, for example, back in the 50s and 60s, he was just a prankster. He didn't really hurt anybody. But in the late 70s, they reintroduced him, and he was actually back to being how he was originally reduced back in Batman #1 in the 40s as a killer. He actually killed people. And so they brought back that kind of menace to the Joker character and comic books in general. So coming back to 1986 with the release of The Dark Knight Returns, it was an interesting story because what they did was they put Batman as if he had retired, and they aged him up to about 60, and the world was just different. It was crime ridden. Gangs were running all over the place, and he had given up being Batman because of the death of his partner. And just like the title suggests, when Batman, the Dark Knight, when he returns, he comes back to take back Gotham and to get rid of the gangs once and for all. And in that story, he fights the Joker again, and it winds up being their last battle. Right around that time in 1987 or 1988, DC Comics also released a book called Batman the Killing Joke. And in this story, it's pretty important because it's the first comic book that kind of gives a little bit of a more adult origin of the Joker. And at this time, if it wasn't solidified that Joker was Batman's #1 arch nemesis, definitely during the 80s is when they finally put the stamp on that. So in 87 or 88, there started to become rumblings of a Batman movie that was going to be in production. I caught wind of it because I was reading about it in magazines, and they were saying, "Ooh, Batman's going to be in a movie soon." And they had been trying to make a Batman movie for so long, and to make it a little bit more serious as opposed to the movie from the 60s. After a while, producers got a hold of Tim Burton, who had just come off Beetlejuice, which was a smash hit. And also, of course, Beetlejuice was played by Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton at the time, he was known for comedies like Mr. Mom and Beetlejuice and movies like that. And when they said that he was going to be cast as Batman, people were enraged because they just said that they didn't want it to be a comedy, and yet they're hiring a comedian to be Batman. So a lot of Bat fans, especially the ones growing up in the 70s and 80s, who were used to a darker Batman, were concerned that their new Batman was going to be a comedy, just like the 60s. At the time, of course, there wasn't any kind of internet or social media. So the only way people could express their concerns was by writing mail, writing letters to Warner Brothers. And apparently Warner Brothers got thousands of letters basically saying, how could you do this? How could you hire Michael Keaton to play Batman? Regardless of all the controversy, I was just happy to get another Batman on the screen. I hadn't seen Batman except for on TV, and I couldn't wait to see him. I couldn't wait to go see a Batman movie. And at this point in my life, in 1989, I was about 13 or so years old. No, 14, 89. Because at this point, 1989, I was 14 years old. I was a comic book nerd. I had gone back and read everything about Batman. I had a book called Batman, The Greatest Stories Ever Told. And it basically went through all the decades and all their more famous stories. And I just became very well versed in Batman lore at that point. So needless to say, with the movie coming out summer of 1989, I couldn't wait to see it. And eventually, the movie Batman was released. This Batman movie was eventually directed by Tim Burton, and Michael Keaton was cast as Batman. The other thing that made this movie exciting was the casting of Joker. And who did they cast as Joker but Jack Nicholson? Now, as far as I'm concerned, Jack Nicholson was born to play the Joker. I mean, just look at his face. He already looks like the Joker minus the makeup. But my biggest problem with it, especially after watching the movie, is I think he was cast as Joker about 10 or 15 years too late. And also about 20 or 30 pounds too late, too. Because I think as a younger Jack Nicholson and a little bit thinner, he would have just looked a lot more menacing and especially a lot more comic book accurate to the Joker. That's really my only complaint about the way the Joker looks, because honestly, they got his costume down perfectly. And the makeup and the smile and the hair, I mean, it was pretty comic book accurate. As far as Michael Keaton was concerned, yeah, for me, reading comic books and growing up watching the cartoons, Michael Keaton just did not fit the mold of Batman for me. He didn't look like Bruce Wayne. He didn't have the build or body for it. He seemed kind of short. And honestly, he was a little bit older because I think at that point he was, I think, in his mid to late 30s when he was cast as Batman. And he just didn't look the part. Also, going in, I had a problem with the costume because the costume up to that point was always with the blue and gray tights and blue gloves and blue cape, that I just wasn't used to seeing an all black costume. But honestly, I'm glad they did that because once I saw that on film and seeing Batman moving around with his cape and the muscles, I mean, I just thought on film it looked amazing. And I always wonder what it would have looked like had they just colored it a little bit differently. But honestly, the costume, it looked great. Now, the plot of this movie is Batman, he's kind of new and the cops don't know what to think about him, but he's taking out bad guys. And the criminal underworld know that there's this vigilante out there calling himself Batman, and they're trying to figure out who it is. They're not trying to figure out who it is. One of those criminals is a crime boss named Carl Grissom, played by Jack Palance. Now, Jack Palance, his character, he finds out that Jack, who's his second in command, Jack Nicholson, is messing around with his girlfriend. So Carl Grissom, he sets up Jack to get arrested and or killed, and that leads to the creation of the Joker. Jack Napier, he sets off a bunch of chemicals in this chemical plant, and he winds up falling into this vat of chemicals because Batman was trying to hold on to him. And eventually, I guess it's kind of ambiguous. He either lets go on purpose or just couldn't hold him anymore. But Jack winds up falling into this vat of chemicals, which winds up staining his skin and making it look white and his hair green, and he becomes the Joker. This part of Joker's origin story is pretty consistent with the comic books. However, it was never in the comics that he was part of this gang or even named Jack Napier like they do in the movie. So they give him a little bit more background here than they ever did in the comic books. When Joker comes back, he winds up killing Carl Grissom and he takes over the gangs. So the rest of the movie is the Joker terrorizing the citizens of Gotham City and Batman trying to capture the Joker. I remember being so excited to see this movie back in '89. I don't remember who I went with, but I do have the original ticket. Just the opening credits with the Danny Elfman music and the camera going around these weird angles, and you can't really tell what it is until the camera pulls back and you realize that it's the bat sign. I mean, it's just so exciting, and I can't describe how I felt just being this kid who couldn't wait to see Batman on the screen, and here it is. I remember the opening scene where it shows Gotham City, and it just looks like this crazy city that just would never be in real life. But I mean, there it is. Then the camera focuses in on a mother, a father, and a son, and it kind of tricks you a little bit in thinking like, oh, is this going to be the origin of Bruce Wayne? Because they start going down an alley and then they get mugged. But the movie kind of pulls a swerve on you because it's, as it turns out, it's not the Waynes, and actually Bruce or Batman is watching from on top of a building, watching this mugging go down. But the first time Batman's on screen and he takes out those two thugs and he beats them up and he grabs the one guy and as the bad guy says, "What are you?" He says, "I'm Batman." I mean, it really just sucked me into the movie. And even though I wasn't sure about the costume and I wasn't sure about Michael Keaton, I mean, that first intro, that first 5 minutes of the movie, I mean, it just really sold me. Now, I've watched this movie several times throughout my childhood and into my adulthood, and I even have these movies on 4K, but I have my problems with it then, and I still have my problems with it now. One of the main problems I have is the writer, Sam Hamm. He wasn't a comic book writer. He did write comic books before the movie came out, and it was a three-part story in Detective Comics that I really didn't like. So I was worried when the movie came out. I was like, I don't think this guy has a handle on the Batman mythos. And after watching the movie then and now, I still feel like there were quite a few screw ups in the script that I just can't get behind. Number one was the creation of all these original characters. I just didn't understand it. Carl Grissom was basically Rupert Thorne who was a comic book character. He created a character called Alexander Knox, who was a reporter in this movie, and this guy, I mean, he plays a big part in Batman. He's a partner with Vicky Vale. He's seen talking with the mayor and Commissioner Gordon a lot. I mean, this dude's in the movie a lot, and he's just an original character that didn't exist in the comic books. And I could never understand why this guy got such a spotlight. In the comics, Vicky Vale is actually like a Lois Lane type character, and she's fully capable of doing things on her own. Even in the comics, Lois Lane has Jimmy Olsen as her sidekick, but Vicky Vale usually she didn't have a sidekick in the comic books. She was her own woman doing her own thing. She was a photojournalist going out there and getting the story on her own. But in this movie, for whatever reason, she has to have this sidekick character of Alexander Knox, and I just think he was so unnecessary because he had Commissioner Gordon and Harvey Dent that really needs that kind of screen time that was taken away completely. Just like in the comic books, Vicky Vale and Bruce Wayne, they wind up having a love story. Vicky Vale was played by Kim Basinger in this movie. And I don't know, man. I never really felt their chemistry. They have a couple scenes together where, man, some of the dialogue is really bad. Especially at one point where Alfred brings in Vicky Vale into the Batcave and lets him in on the secret, which I never understood because Alfred's constantly telling him, "Hey, this is the girl for you," and Bruce is like, "Well, I don't know, I kind of like her," but then all of a sudden she shows up in the Batcave, and it's like, "Whoops, I guess the secret's out." But man, the dialogue that they have in that exchange when they're in the Batcave together is like, "Oh, are we gonna love each other? I'd like to." It's really bad, and it makes me just roll my eyes. Some of the Joker's jokes, I really honestly I didn't understand. I didn't understand them then. I still don't understand now. There are a couple things that he says throughout the movie that just weren't funny, and I don't understand what he's even trying to say. And this last time I watched it, I put the subtitles on, and it still didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, never rub another man's rhubarb. I don't even know what that means. Not all of his jokes fall flat for me. I'd say they're about 50-50, but because I do like some of the things that he says, it's kind of funny. But I don't know. I just think that Jack Nicholson could have done a little bit better. He was almost copying Cesar Romero, which is the Joker from the TV series, just a little bit darker. And I remember all the parent groups at the time, all the controversy of this movie being so dark and dirty, and it's not like the '60s Batman, which the movie wasn't trying to be. But now looking back, it's not even that dark. I mean, the Batman movies that have come out in the last 10 years are way darker than this movie. But I understand the comparison. Just the Batman suit alone being all jet black and rubber and muscles compared to the blue and gray tights. I mean, I get it. And the Joker in this movie was actually killing people, whereas the Cesar Romero Joker, he didn't kill anybody. He was just there for fun. Uh, I understand the comparisons, but I mean, these are two wildly different movies, wildly different interpretations, and that's what's kind of cool about Batman is you can put him in different situations and make him fit, and the movie could still work. Another big complaint I have about the Joker is for whatever reason he starts to hide himself, and he would put flesh-colored makeup on him, and I never understood why, because the Joker, especially in the comic books, I mean, he's the Joker. He doesn't care what you think about him, and it almost seemed like he was hiding that part of himself, and I just never understood why they did that in the movie. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when the Joker he goes into a museum to go talk to Vicky Vale, and they gas the whole museum, and everybody's, I don't know if they've passed out or died, I'm not sure, but anyway, he introduces himself to Vicky Vale, and he basically tells her how much he's into her. And when Batman comes crushing, and when Batman comes crashing through the window seal. So when Batman comes crashing through the skylight, I just love it. He comes down, he grabs Vicky Vale, he swings out of there. Joker's saying, "Where does he get those wonderful toys?" And then when the hero shot of the Batmobile out there, and the Danny Elfman music just comes on and it's super loud, and I mean, it still gets me now. I love that Batmobile. When he takes off, there's a little chase scene, and there's a fight scene at the end. I mean, that whole, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so of the movie, I just love it. It's the best part of the movie as far as I'm concerned. Another problem I have with the movie is the big reveal that Jack Nicholson or the Joker is the one who kills Bruce Wayne's parents. It's not like that in the comic books. I don't like it in the movies. I really, really was dead set against it. And I understand that from a movie standpoint, it kind of makes sense because he created Batman, and then in a way, Batman creates a Joker. It's kind of a, a circle, I guess. But honestly, I just don't like it. Another scene that I thoroughly enjoy is during the Joker parade, when the Joker comes out and he's on the floats and he has these large balloons that wind up having Joker gas in it. And I mean, just the way he's dancing around to the Prince music, and it's so comic booky that I really like that scene. And then that's the big reveal of the Batwing or Batman's plane, and I love the way it comes up and it silhouettes against the moon, so it looks like the bat signal. I mean, it's pretty cool. And for all the people that said Snyder's Batman was a murderer, the Ben Affleck Batman, he just killed people indiscriminately, Batman kills quite a few people in this movie. I mean, he kills Joker at the end, he's responsible for his death. He actually shoots with guns and missiles some of the bad guys that are on the floats, and he also kills the guy that looks like Candyman that's fighting him up on the tower when he's at Access Chemicals and he sets off a bomb, just killing all the bad guys that were in there. I mean, he kills at least 10 people. And for me, as a comic book reader, Batman is just not a killer. So that was just another thing that I didn't quite agree with on this movie. I didn't agree with it then, and I still don't agree with it now. The cool thing about this movie is it started another wave, like another generation of Batmania. Batman was everywhere, on t-shirts, on lunchboxes, action figures. I mean, it was just a topic of conversation that Batman was just the man. And for me, being a Batman fan at that time, and like I said, I was a young teenager. I mean, it was just cool seeing that everybody else would liked Batman just like I did, and it was just a good feeling. I mean, we kind of take it for granted now because comic book heroes is just a thing now, and people wear T-shirts all the time now of their favorite superheroes. But back then, it wasn't that way. And for me to wear a Batman T-shirt, I mean, people might know who Batman was, but it wasn't looked at as being like cool, like it kind of is now. I mean, I guess it's cool. I don't know. I still wear Batman T-shirts. I think it's cool. When it comes to rating Batman '89, it's a little rough for me because that was the movie that I grew up with. That was my Batman that I went to the movies to, even though was emotionally attached to the Batman '66 series. But this is when I mean, I was just a comic book reader, and I was so excited for this movie, and I did enjoy it somewhat. And watching it now, I mean, parts of it still hold up, but it's not quite as exciting as it used to be when I saw it in the movie theaters the first time around. So when it comes to rating this movie, it's a little difficult for me because I have to go through nostalgia and everything else. If I had to give it a rating, I think I'd give it 2.5 out of 4 wheelchairs. So that's it for this episode. Like I said, I'm breaking this up into 4 parts. It's just too much Batman information that I just could not fit into one episode. So like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell notification when something new comes out because I'll be releasing part 2 very soon. So thank you for watching. My name is Trini. I am the Batquad, and I am End of Watch.